At 10 minutes past 9, we continue with the broadcast this morning right here on Salah Media on News and Views. If you have just tuned in, we welcome you to the show. Now, the second half of the show is going to be focused on three issues. One, looking at the plight of the Uyghur Muslims who continue to suffer, and also taking a look at Islamic Relief South Africa, talking about the disaster response effort in the Morocco earthquake and the Libyan floods, and also taking a look at climate crisis and looking at how this impacts on women. Now, these are a number of issues, and just coming back to the whole issue surrounding China. Now, recently, we've just gotten over the BRICS summit in South Africa. There was a lot of focus on Russia, its involvement in Ukraine, war crimes against humanity, Vladimir Putin. We know what had been playing out. There was focus also on Narendra Modi, on what is playing out in Kashmir, the occupation of Kashmir, and also the oppression of Muslims in India in general. But how much talk was there about China? And China, we know that the world is scrambling to align themselves with China in more ways than one. We've seen the expansion of BRICS. We've seen a lot of more Muslim countries, countries like Iran, countries like Saudi Arabia, aligning themselves to BRICS. And obviously, with their involvement as far as China is concerned, we've seen China on a diplomatic front making inroads into the Muslim world, trying to broker this deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. The latest, we've heard China making inroads into Afghanistan. And while all of that has been playing out, we've seen the oppression and the oppression of Muslims in the in the Xinjiang region, the Uyghur Muslims, East Turkestan, for want of a better term. And when you hear the Chinese president Xi Jinping saying that the Uyghur region is enjoying hard-won social stability, he says it is moving towards unity, harmony, and prosperity. What is the Chinese president actually talking about? And this is the reason why we are talking with director at the World Uyghur Congress out in Berlin. We joined by Gheyyur Qurban. Gheyyur, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to send the great wishes from the Germany's capital to the over Muslim brothers and sisters all over the world from your screen.
Yes, it's just wonderful that you're able to join us now for the very reasons that I spoke about in my introduction. The world looking up to China, China trying to convince the world that it is now this bastion that of democracy, and it is looking at associations, it is looking at alignments with the entire world, including the Muslim world. And when the president talks about social stability in the Xinjiang region, when he speaks about a region that is moving towards unity, harmony, and prosperity, how do you respond to that, Gheyyur?
Well, it is the Chinese President Xi Jinping who commenced the all-out war and campaign against the Muslim Uyghurs and other Turkic Muslim communities in Eastern Turkestan since 20 in the late 2016. That and as a result of that, more than 1.8 to 3 million Uyghur and other ethnic Turkic Muslim communities has been put into the internment concentration camps where they daily brainwashed, they daily brainwashed, faltered, tortured, um, and to force it to eradicate their national, ethnical, and religious identities. And this policy has gained a lot of international attention since that, and until today, more than 11 national parliaments, including France, Belgium, and also Canada, and recognizing the ongoing Chinese policies as ongoing genocide. The focus of the Chinese policies is that they see the Uyghurs and other Turkic ethnic communities here in Turkestan as a foreign body because of the religion, because of Islam, and because of the language they are speaking. They are speaking Uyghur and other Turkic languages, and this is from the points of the brutal Chinese Communist Party dictatorship as a foreign element and comprising jeopardizing their ideas of unity. So when the Chinese President Xi Jinping claims that there is a unity in this region, it means that the religious and ethnic identity of the Uyghur Muslims is largely being eradicated, and so established the so-called unity, which is just praising the Chinese Communist Party and abandoning the true religion of Islam.
Yes, and all of this in an effort to actually punish the Muslims of that region. And, we've seen campaigns like the Strike Hard campaign against what they call terrorism, what they call extremism. And you speak about the concentration camps, you speak about the detentions, and this whole political re education campaign in these detention centers, in these concentration camps, to try and remove the identity of Islam and Muslims in each and every way.
Yes, exactly. And during these campaigns, which started at least 2016, but still in over days, the Chinese government has heavily focused on to eradicate every aspect of religious and cultural identity of the Uyghur Muslim population. So that's why that the Chinese government has openly prohibited every Islamic aspect in the society, including the wearing Islamic clothes, to wearing Islamic symbols, but but since, if I can correctly remember, already since 1996, the Chinese government has launched various of campaigns against the Islam in the region, to claiming that the Islam is opium, and that disease, mental disease, to be eradicated. Since then, the Chinese government has prohibited to local population, especially the younger population, to go into the mosques. I can still remember already during that time when I was in China in 1996, the Chinese government has begun to crush on the Islam, so that they prohibiting us to fasting. I can remember that every morning during the holy month of Ramadan, the Chinese teachers and also the local officials came into the classrooms and enforced us to eat and break over fasting, and that was happening in since late 1990s. But what happened 2016 is that the Chinese government has massively increased the scale of the repression, so that they put all those people who they think as loyal to their religion and ethnic identity to put into the concentration camps. In these days, if you were able to travel to that region, you can easily see that the Islamic the Islamic scenes and Islamic repression, Islamic impression in the region are mostly gone. And what only saved is those symbolic locations like the Grand Bazaar in Urumqi, where the Chinese government bring the orchestrated journalists, pro-Chinese narrative journalists to there, and to see that the Uyghurs are living happy there. But if you look at few kilometers away, you cannot even recognize the Uyghur characteristics of this Uyghur nation. And all those remote areas, the mosques has been already demolished. The Chinese government has, according to the international human rights organizations, the Chinese government has demolished 16,000 mosques. 16,000 mosques in the region. And among the mosques, there are the mosques which has more than 800 years of history, which belongs to one of the oldest in the region and representing the Islamic history in the region. But not merely on that, the Chinese government also forcing the small children, the children to spying on their parents, and then when they come to the school, they ask they ask the children whether they pray after eating, whether the parents forcing their children to learn Quran and memorize Quran, and encouraging them to making salah. But also the Chinese government is making a so-called drinking festivals, especially during the holy months of Ramadan, to checking the people whether they are fasting, whether they are serious enough to show their loyalty to the Communist Party, without which they being put into this terrible concentration camps.
Yes, and also, Gheyyur, what we've also learned is, you mentioned all the religious and the Islamic identity that is being wiped out, and you mentioned 16,000 mosques, and we've heard of many mosques actually being turned even into pig farms as well. The repression that is taking place in Ramadan, and then they've got their own imams that they are putting homegrown imams that obviously promote the Chinese narrative as well to try and show the entire world. But also, what this is actually done also is we've learned about in the middle of the night picking people up. They disappear into nowhere. People don't even know where they are. You can't attend the funeral of a Muslim neighbor, and then again looking at how the family has been torn apart, where we've seen parents being detained, their children put into orphanages, how the entire family structure has actually been destroyed, and all of this to get rid of the Islamic culture and identity and Muslim identity.
Yes, exactly as you said, these kind of crimes has been documented widely. If you look at, I encourage you, the Muslim brothers and sisters, to visit the reports of the United Nations Human Rights Commission, but also the Human Rights Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and many other human rights organizations and think tanks, and what they find about of these atrocities. And this has been accumulated to an ongoing genocide. It's not a simple human rights abuses which happened everywhere in the world, but this is might be the largest concentration of people on ethnic community since the end of the Second World War. We are talking about a silent genocide that the Chinese government has been doing. So the Chinese government, thanks to the feelings, the negative feelings of the Muslim world towards the West, they're utilizing this and showing a kindship to the Muslim leaders, and to achieving their silence on this ongoing genocide. The Chinese government, because in the recent media, the Chinese government has increasingly making a propaganda to showing that this region is all okay. But we have to remember that the Chinese government has advanced their methods and patterns of repression, so that the Chinese government has now advanced AI powered technologies to recognize the Uyghurs and monitor the Uyghurs, so that all these visible signs of their repression, which has been everywhere since 2016, which I mean that in every 5 to 600 meters away, a police station, to stopping the people physically and checking their phones, checking their identities, and checking their looking whether they are wearing Islamic symbols and national symbols, so that they can be immediately putting into the concentration camp. Those obvious signs of repression has now vanished on the streets of East Turkestan, thanks to high-tech repression that the Chinese government not only utilizing to punishing the other communities in China, like Tibetans and Hong Kong and the Chinese dissidents, but also exporting to the entire world, especially the third world, to helping the dictator regions and governments to monitoring and curbing their own people.
Yes. Now, for people like yourselves, and I'm sure that there are many Uyghurs living outside of China, and I'm sure it's very, very difficult for people like yourselves to stay in touch with your families, with your friends, to inquire about the well-being, where they are at this point in time. And I'm sure, it's. The people of East Turkestan are definitely not leading a normal life. And I'm sure even those of you outside of China are also not leading a normal life, because this is an ongoing concern. It's an ongoing worry about what is taking place in your part of the world.
Yes, exactly. The Chinese government has been using our parents, our loved ones left in our homeland as a terrible weapon to making a pressure against us. So that it is not only happening on me, but happening on many vocal voices of the Uyghur human rights all around the world. That the Chinese government weaponizing our parents, to threatening, to harming them, putting them into the internment camps, but also forcing them to cut every relationship, every kind of contact with us, so that we have to feel in everyday disparity and anxiety about their safety every day. And this is really torturous, and this is why you cannot see the obvious signs of repression as the governments like Russia, who sent killers to even to Germany and Berlin, to killing their opponents. But the Chinese government trying to kill us from inside, so kill us from inside, to making pressure to us, to keeping us silence.
Yes. Now, just looking at, we know the world media obviously sometimes remains silent on what is happening over the Uyghurs. And until we've seen the United Nations, we've seen the reports that have come through as well. We've seen a few noises come out of America, critical of the Chinese and what they have been doing in some of the Western countries. But looking at China, because of its economic might, because of its economic power, many countries still continue associating with China. They refuse to criticize China. Many Muslim countries, and this is the sad part, Gheyyur, where we see Muslim countries. I mentioned, countries like Saudi Arabia and Iran and all these countries that are now part of BRICS, which are together with China, and for economic reasons, they've got this relationship. But to a large extent, the Muslim world is still very, very silent or not very vocal on China as far as its human rights abuses go, the atrocities and the genocide, because these are tantamount to crimes against humanity.
Yes, this is. Thank you very much for mentioning this point. This is very unfortunate development that we seen also in the past, but also today. That the majority of the Muslim countries to supporting the Chinese narratives. We see in the important international platforms like the international that the United Nations Human Rights Council, the majority of the countries supporting Chinese narratives are unfortunately the Muslim countries. And that's why the Chinese government also utilizing this silence on the Muslim community to alleging the West that this is the game of the West, and that this everything is going well towards the Uyghur Muslim and other Turkic Muslim communities. Unfortunately, the the only reason why the Chinese government attacking the religious, the Islamic belief of the Uyghur and other Turkic minority, Turkic nations in East Turkestan, is that the Chinese government, because they are a communist regime and they have communist ideologies, they want to establish unity. The so-called unity is to make every Siams resemble and loyal to the Communist Party. And because of the Islamic region and because of the Uyghur identity, that prohibited us to become a Chinese. And that's why the Chinese government has seen this an obstacle, an important obstacle, which keeping the Uyghurs not being assimilated over 1,000 years. And that's why the Chinese government is increasing their campaigns to attacking this religion. Despite of the fact that Chinese government's main target in the repression and the genocidal policies towards Uyghur and other Turkic nations in East Turkestan is Islam. Unfortunately, this is being largely ignored and even supported by the Muslim nations. I think that the Chinese government, using, as you mentioned, their economic power, but also utilizing, manipulating the general view and the general critical view of the Muslim communities towards the West, and showing themselves as allies. And this is what the situation is being now. But I am pretty sure that in the Islamic world, there is a revival of the understanding of the situation. We have been seeing not only from the Turkic Islamic world, but also other parts of the Islamic world. We have been seeing now increased solidarity and support from our Muslim brothers and sisters, and we are very happy for that. But I would like to send the message to the Muslim nations that in front of this unjust, must not stay silent. Please think about what will happen thereafter.
Well, certainly, and what you're saying is very, very true. Where we have majority of the Muslim world, as particularly governments that look away on the ground, I am certain that there is a lot of support for the Uyghur cause because at the end of the day, as Muslims, we are brothers and we are sisters unto each other, and it is a concern, and we will continue to support. Wherever we can, we will continue making dua for the well-being of the
Amen.
Uyghur Muslims, and more importantly, inshallah, we make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala eradicate this great injustice and this oppression and this genocide and these crimes against humanity against the Uyghur Muslims. Brother Gheyyur Qurban, Jazakallah khairan so much for your time this morning with us right here on Salam Media. We wish you well, inshallah. We wish you, we make dua that you be granted the
Amen.
strength to
Amen. Inshallah,
continue
ya Rabbal
in your
Alamin.
struggle, inshallah, and more importantly, victory for the Uyghur people, inshallah, at some
Amen.
point in time.
Amen. Thank you very much for your interview. Thank you very much, and stay healthy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Gheyyur Qurban with us this morning, once again reinforcing the plight of the Uyghur Muslims, forgotten in more ways than one. And really, this is extremely sad. It is a sad situation where we find that these are Muslim brothers, Muslim sisters, their identity, their culture in each and every way, on a social level, on a religious level, in every way. They have been persecuted to no ends. And when we talk about countries like Russia, when we talk about countries like India, when we talk about Israel, when we speak about Myanmar, when we speak about all these atrocities, let us not forget. Let us not forget our brothers and sisters in the East Turkestan region. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on each and every one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And we're going to go for a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be joined by Abdullah Alim Hamza. We're talking about the relief effort out in Morocco as a result of the earthquake and the Libyan floods.